This is an interview with Professor Michael Littman, a computer scientist and the Associate Provost for Artificial Intelligence at Brown University. He's researched neural networks since the 1980s and is known for using music videos and parodies to make complex machine learning ideas easier to understand. In this conversation, we talk about what AI used to be, what chatbots actually are, and why they're forcing schools to rethink what learning really means. You can read more about Michael Littman on our website, 6degrees.blog, and our Instagram page, 6 Degrees Away. Thank you and enjoy the interview.
Just to start off sort of generally, what was AI when you first sort of learned about the topic, and what has it become? What do you think it will be?
Yeah, no, that's a fun question. So I was first exposed to AI it was probably before college, but then I was drawn to it in college. This was now the late 80s. AI was a part of computer science, right? So that's one really useful way of thinking about it is that there was a bunch of sub areas of computer science. There was systems, theory, AI. Those are the main three, and then there's some, like programming languages sometimes falls under systems and sometimes that. But it was one of the pillars of the field of computer science. And now it's fighting to sort of be all of computer science, which is very, very weird. I'd always thought it was an interesting topic. I think that as a kind of a laboratory experiment, like just to try to understand what we think intelligence is and how to automate it is really neat. As a thing that's out in the world, it's a little more unsettling, right? It's this is what we're that's one of the differences between then and now is then it was mostly an experiment. It was mostly a research idea. Now it's something that actually is touching the lives of tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people, and that's a lot to really think about.
Mhm. So, are you optimistic looking towards the future in terms of AI, or do you think there'll be a Terminator like takeover?
Yeah, I would say I'm optimistic. I mean, I'm optimistic about people in general, and I think this is just another thing for people to work with and work on. So yeah, as far as like the Terminator scenario is concerned, we've been hearing that for many years. Like the idea was already out there when the movie came out, and then when the technology started to improve, the idea from the movie was already out. So this is a thing that people have been mulling. I still haven't really heard the narrative that really is compelling to me. It strikes me as very, very sci-fi, very like, oh gosh, what would it be like? And it's really great from a what if perspective, but like I don't see it playing out the way that the movies have it play out because it involves a turning over of resources to machines in a way that people tend to be very unwilling to do, and that machines seem very unable to take on. So there's still a huge gap, I think, between human control of our destiny and machine control of our destiny. And like, like it has in the Terminator movies, like people are pretty scrappy. Like if things come to that, we will do what we have to do we're not we're when we feel threatened, we do very dramatic things. And so I don't see it really going down that road yeah, in any serious way.
Mhm. So, as a professor and the associate provost for AI at Brown, you're at the center of the debate on AI in schools. How do you view students using ChatGPT to write an essay or to code, things like that?
Yeah, so this is obvious. I've spent the entire day talking about this with people because it is very much at the center of our concerns. AI is relevant to a lot of different things, but this topic is relevant to everybody at a university, right? So like everybody's thinking about it, everybody has an opinion. One of the things that's missing at the moment is kind of a shared understanding of what all this means. I personally think that the idea of a student writing an essay with a chatbot is it's sort of a pointless exercise. Like what why like we never like professors when we assign like please write us this essay, it's not because we want the essay, right? It's like and then you give me the essay. It's like, well, I didn't want this. I wanted you to go through the experience of creating it because to the best of our understanding, that process, right? That the steps that you take to try to put together an essay are really important for your cognitive development, or it actually helps you learn and learn to think. And so, right, the idea that we would just, outsource this to a program and the program will do it for us is kind of, it kind of misses the whole point. So I think this is a problem. I think it's a problem not of a teacher versus student nature. I think it's sort of teachers and students together against the technology in some sense, or kind of like at the moment the technology is pushing against what we have set up as a process for trying to get learning to happen. And it's interfering with that. And we need to find ways of actually turning that around. So instead of interfering, it's actually helping. And yeah, again, because at the end of the day, it's often not the product that we're looking for. Now, that's not universally the case. So one of the challenges that we're having at the university is that professors are saying, you need, like they're saying to me and to each other, like, we need rules and we'll just follow them. Like, you just need to tell us what the rules are. But the fact of the matter is, there isn't any rules that actually make sense for everybody at a university, because there's some cases where the artifact, like the actual essay that's being produced, is kind of the point, right? So we have people at our School for International Studies where when people graduate and they go out into the world, they're going to be writing position papers on various topics, like should we be blockading I don't know, Britain's use of nuclear technology. I don't know, just to make something up. And so the way that this works today is that you tell smart people to go out and look into this and write a report that says, well, these are the reasons that I think this would be positive. These are the reasons I think it would be negative. And in my judgment, as a human who actually cares about this, this is what I think this is what I would recommend as what our policy should be on this particular topic. Right. So those documents, like you actually produce a report and that report goes out there, that is what they're trying to produce. And if AI can be helpful in producing that, that's great. Like people should do that, as long as it doesn't suck, right? As long as it doesn't say things like, well, I think this would be a good idea because that's going to get us to Jupiter next. And it's like, wait, what? Like, and chatbots will sometimes do that. They'll throw in weird things from left field. And so teaching students how to use these tools in a way that actually leads them to a better product, in many cases, is the goal. But a lot of the essays that we ask students to write, it's because nobody cares. Like, the students are never going to write those kinds of essays, but training yourself to think carefully about a problem is something they're going to use for their whole lives. And so we don't want to undermine that. So it's complicated. It's more complicated than I think even people realize when they get worried, like, oh no, maybe people are using this to cheat. Like, cheating is not really the issue here. Learning is the issue. And we have to make sure that people are getting the education that they actually are going to need to live as human beings in our world.
So do you think the way to go about that is sort of just banning AI outright, or to kind of restructure the way assignments are formed? If that makes sense.
Yeah. So as I was pointing out, like in some cases, no, the AI is the point. Like if you're actually learning how to use this as a tool to create things, then you have to use it, right? It has to be part of your process in learning. Banning outright, I mean, there's so many things wrong with that. One is it's again, it's missing the point. Like, the point is not, have you used AI or not? The point is, have you learned to think? And so I think we're asking the wrong question. The other thing is, you can ban it all you want. It's happening, and students are doing it, and in some cases it's because they're willfully, like, they're trying to cheat. Like, they know that they need to get this grade because they have to graduate, and they don't really care anything about anything other than graduating. So it's just a matter of checking that box. I did the thing, give me a grade, let me move on. But that's not the usual case. I think in most cases, the issue is that the students actually they want to learn. Sometimes they feel like they're obligated to use the AI because they have it in their head that all their peers are using it and they're going to look bad if they don't join in. They sometimes don't know exactly where the line is, and so we've always had this concept of plagiarism, and I think it's always been complicated to say what is plagiarism and what isn't plagiarism. But it's now really complicated, right? Because these chatbots can participate in every phase of the writing process. And which of those are legitimate, not plagiarism, and which ones are plagiarism? Like, the bots themselves, in some sense, are plagiarism engines because they're trained on written text, other people's writings. And then they learn everything that they are able to do about writing and manipulating language all comes from reading other people's stuff. Right? It's not like they live in the world and They're writing about their experiences. Everything that they are is trained on other people's writing. So like there is nothing coming out of the chatbot that isn't at some level plagiarized. So that's weird, right? Because it can spit out text that doesn't word for word match anything that's ever been written. And yet that's how it came to be. And I don't think anybody has a really clear, bright line that they can draw to say, okay, this use of AI is plagiarism, this use of AI is not plagiarism. So it is complicated.
So through this interview series, I've talked to a lot of people who are skeptical about AI and optimistic about AI, who you may know like Scott Aronson or Robin
Hmm.
Hanson. I don't know. Um, but I've been told by them and seen online that AI is acting as a sort of organism of its own, if that makes sense. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I don't think it is. I mean, I think that you can always there's a metaphor that says that like, I don't know, a corporation is kind of a being and a group of people that are any group of people is kind of its own organism. Like that's one of the amazing things that we as human beings can do is we can group together and form a kind of meta organism, right? That is part of why our species has been so successful. So yes, yes, it's part of a bigger organism. But I think in some cases, people are telling a story that says they have their own, like almost explicit desires and goals, and that they are in some ways a direct competitor to us on this planet. I'm not seeing that at all. I think I think it's not true. I think it could be true in principle, but I think that to get from where we are now to that point where it really is true in principle, we're going to have to make a lot of really dumb choices. Now, I wouldn't put it past us. We've made dumb choices before, like we as a species, like we sometimes we do things that we didn't really think all the way through. But I don't think at the moment we're in this place where AI is kind of fighting to break free. And once it actually breaks free, then all our lives are at risk. I think that is not an accurate description of where we are.
Mhm. So you're famous in the computer science world for making music videos and parodies to explain complex topics. How did you first come up with the idea, and what's been your favorite experience within your music production career?
Oh, yeah, thanks for asking that. So my as a kid, I spent a lot of time watching and being a little bit obsessed with a little mini series called Schoolhouse Rock, which maybe you've heard of, maybe
No.
question mark? No, not even a little bit. So it used to be there used to be this thing called television, right? So it used to be that and Saturday mornings, a lot of kids, and I was definitely one of those kids, would get up early, the parents were still asleep, go downstairs, turn on the television, and just watch, cartoons till eventually the parents would be like, "You got to eat lunch. We have to start the day." Um, but uh, I think it was ABC at the time, one of the major networks would put in between shows, like in that place that would sometimes be commercials, but sometimes they'd put in a 30-second little music video called Schoolhouse Rock, and they covered wow, so many topics. There was stuff about American history. There was stuff about language and grammar. There was stuff about mathematics, but mathematics was mostly like multiplication tables. It wasn't like higher mathematics. It was just like ways of remembering what's going on. Civics, which I guess is related to American history. Like I can tell you the entire preamble to the American Constitution because they in Schoolhouse Rock they set it to music, like really catchy music. And it's remembering songs is easier than just remembering paragraphs of text. And so it was just this really neat thing. And I found it like a great way to learn. I think I'm very sort of musically oriented, and I love the animations, and it was witty. It was perfect. And so I took on board, not only did I learn stuff from that, but the meta lesson for me was, oh, this is a great way of getting people to engage with complex material. And so when I became a computer science professor, I was teaching classes, and I was like, okay, it's the end of the semester. I need a way of just like sharing with people, like, this is how I think it all fits together. Let me just summarize the class. I'll do it in a song. So so that's kind of how it started. I would write these songs, and then it turns out singing in front of people in class made me sweat profusely. Like it just made me so nervous to just be in front of people and like my voice, just my naked voice exposed for everyone to see. And so I found that was uncomfortable. So I was like, I'll pre-record that. And if I'm going to pre-record it, I might as well put some images with it. And then it kind of spiraled into, okay, now it's a full-on music video.
Mhm. So If you could snap your fingers and have the general public understand something about AI that they currently get wrong, what would it be?
The public is all over the place. So I don't think there's one right answer to that. But I think the first level that I would do is to have people understand that AI are programs. They're just computer programs. And so they're not some mystical being that beamed in from another planet or from the future. Like they're computer programs. And computer programs can do a lot of damage, but like it's not a thing. It's not it's as you said, an organism, right? The thinking of it as first of all a computer program. And so that should make it a little less scary. But on the other side, it's a computer program that no human being wrote. And that should give you pause, right? That should make you worried that these are not programs that people had thought through, that this is how I want it to behave. So I'm going to put all that together, which would be a normal computer program. No, these are computer programs, but no person wrote them. They were written by just extracting things from data. And the program kind of assembled itself. And it's in fact a program that we as human beings don't know how to write. So even if we wanted to have like, let's replace these chatbots with chatbots that people authored, we don't know how to write programs like that. And I think that is helpful, I think, to the general public because first of all, it helps them understand that when these systems do weird things, it's not by design. It's sometimes counter to their design. And the reason that we haven't fixed it yet is because we never designed them to do anything in the first place. It's really hard to know how to change them so that they behave more the way we want them to behave. And so that should give people at least a sense of taking everything with a grain of salt, right? Don't believe everything that these chatbots have to say, and don't believe that they're going to solve all the world's problems, right? That this is a developing technology. Unfortunately, it's developing in public, right? Like in some ways, it would have been better if it was just we were just doing this in the lab still, and it wasn't out, and it wasn't until we had it kind of better understood and better in control before we released it to the world. But that's not where we are now. It's been released. I sometimes refer to it chatbots as a lab leak, kind of like the way that people talk about well, COVID is possibly a lab leak. Like it was something that was fine in the lab, but now that it's out in the world, it's not having all the intended consequences. And now it's endemic, just like the way that COVID is endemic. It's just something that we now have to live our lives in the existence of. We can't make it go away. We can't necessarily change it immediately into something better. We just have to kind of live with it. And I think that's a useful frame.
So when you say AI chatbots weren't written by humans, what does that mean? What were they written by, if that makes sense?
Yeah. So if not humans, then what?
Yeah.
So it's this to a first approximation. I think it's useful to think it's written by machine learning. All right. So and what does that mean? So machine learning basically says, and this is a very rough approximation, but basically, let me just generate random programs that do random things, and compare the output of that program to a data set. We've got a collection of examples that say, "Hey, I want a program that if you give it this input, produces this output, and if you give it this input, it produces this output, and if you give it this input," and you have maybe millions of those examples, and now you generate a random program and you ask, does it do what we wanted it to do? Does it match the data? And if the answer is yes, then we stop and we say, great, this is the output. And if it doesn't, then we just keep generating new programs until it does. Right now, if you were really doing it completely at random, you'd never get a program that actually did anything useful. Internally, it's actually using the principles of calculus. So calculus. It turns out somebody did find it useful. It's using calculus to decide, okay, if we want the output to be more like this, how does the inside of the inside of the program need to change to make that the output that we get? And so the reason that that's calculus is all about it's all about slopes, right? Slopes of functions. So you have this complicated function and you say, okay, at this point the function is this high, but how is it changing? How is it changing? And if we want to find where on the curve it's minimized, we have to ask, well, what is the gradient telling us? What is the derivative telling us is where this is going to get smaller? And that's internally what these programs are actually doing. They're computing a derivative to determine how can I be more accurate? How can I change internally, how can I change my own programming so that it is more accurate with respect to this data? So that's the sense in which it's not written by people. It's actually written through this iterative process of improvement that people pick the data. Like people get to decide, okay, this is the data set that I want you to match, but people don't write the program to actually produce the answers. They use this iterative process to just happen upon it.
Mhm.
I don't know if
So
that does that help actually make it
yeah,
clear? Or
it makes yeah, it makes some sense with a little bit of background knowledge on the thing.
okay.
But so artificial intelligence and machine learning have obviously existed for a long time in the past. So how come it just seems like now it's becoming such a huge thing and all of a sudden it's becoming so accelerated?
Yeah, it's a really great question. So my research has been in the field of neural networks since the 80s when there was a big so it turns out that neural networks, which is the technology behind chatbots and these vision programs like the programs that can make images given a description, like all this stuff that's like, oh my gosh, this didn't exist before and it exists now. It's all based on neural networks. And neural networks have actually had historically three phases of like people being excited about them. The first one was in the 50s. I was not born yet. You also were not born yet. And they could do very, very, very limited things, but it was like a really promising idea. But it just there were provable limits on the sorts of things they could do. And that kind of pushed it into the background. In the 80s, basically the idea of using calculus came up, and that actually greatly expanded what these things were able to do. And so there was a lot of excitement in the 80s around this. That's kind of when I got on the scene. You probably were not born yet, but I was born yet, and I was actually working on this and meeting the people who were trying to make this happen. And and it went okay for not even a whole decade. But there was a block of years where a lot of people were working on this. But ultimately, it was limited again, further than the first time in the 50s, but still limited.
Mhm.
So it kind of pulled back a little bit. There was a handful of people that continue to work on it, but mostly the rest of the field, like computer science and engineering and artificial intelligence as a field and statistics, they all kind of backed away from this. What happened in the interim, this is now trying to address your question directly, were I like to think of it as three things. One is that these models, like I said, they depend on data. And so if you have lots of interesting data, there's something interesting to do with them.
Mhm.
In that interim between the 80s and the like 2010s, people started to live their lives online to some degree, right? Between social networks and email and web pages and stuff, like lots and lots of the human experience was being put on computers. It wasn't like that before. People would just have experiences. If we were having an interview, you'd be with me in this classroom and we'd be having a conversation, and none of it would be captured. But here we could be recorded. This message is being recorded. This is being recorded, right? And so that digital record started to become commonplace, and just I don't think it started with anybody thinking, oh, this is going to be really useful for machine learning. But it turns out to be incredibly useful for machine learning. So the fact that that all this data started to get collected is a big shift from the 80s. Then computers had been getting consistently faster and faster and faster over that period, following something that's known as Moore's Law, where basically every year and a half, computers would be twice as fast as they were. And that uh, in some ways culminated in the notion of a graphics processing unit, like a specialized chip for doing something very, very specialized, which is basically computer games, right? So a company, several companies were making specialized chips just to make video games go fast enough that they were just rich and engaging and fully animated. And it turns out those chips were extremely well designed for also doing machine learning.
Mhm.
So now we've got the data to feed machine learning. We've got better computer processing to do uh, way more level, iterations of machine learning than we could ever do in the past. And then thirdly, there was some improvements in the algorithms themselves. People actually came to understand what it was that wasn't working in the 80s and how to fix it, how to change the learning programs themselves, like the things that are the programs that are doing the learning, change them so that they actually work under a much broader set of conditions. And so those three things all came together in like, I don't know, 2012 or so. And people were like, oh, wait, this is new. And then ever since 2012, things have just been building and building and building and building. But I think that was the key step is the processing, the data, and some new algorithmic ideas.
Mhm. So I'm asking this as a high school junior who's 17 years old, hoping to go to a good university one day. So, how do you view the different cultures at the various universities you've either taught or attended as a student?
Yeah, so I was a professor at Rutgers, which is the State University of New Jersey. I am now a professor at Brown, which is an Ivy League school. I think most of my experience has been on that side of things, but nonetheless, these schools all have kind of different different attitudes, different characters, different things that they afford, that they make available to the students so that they can to learn from them. I think a lot of these schools are excellent. Like, I mean, Rutgers is a public school, and it's fantastic. It's huge, and there's lots of bad stuff, but there's also lots of good stuff. It's just so big that it's diverse, and so you can actually get a really good education, but you have to be more selective, right? You have to, like, if you're at Rutgers, you need to be thinking about like what's going to be best for my academic journey, because there are directions you can go on campus that are going to be less beneficial to you. Some schools, like Brown, where I am now, the students are very carefully selected. They all prove themselves in high school to be extremely promising young intellects. Um, it's sort of, you can't go once you get to campus here, you sort of can't go wrong, because you're surrounded by, and part of it is the students, it's the other students. Like, Brown is great because Brown attracts great students that then are great together, right? And it's almost like that you just need a watering hole. You just need a meeting place where really talented people can all come together and benefit from each other's presence. So I'm not sure if that's exactly what you're asking. I could get into more of the details, like, well, Carnegie Mellon has these kinds of properties, but like that's different from Princeton, which has these other properties.
Mhm.
Uh, it wouldn't be very comprehensive. I mean, I can give you that kind of information, and I can even talk about schools where I haven't been, but I just kind of have met people from there, so I have a sense of what they're about. But to first order of approximation, all these schools are doing everything they can to give students opportunities to thrive.
Mhm. So I think that was a good general assessment. But lastly, we ask all of our interviewees, how do you define success personally and professionally?
That is a great question. And I think it's actually really hard to answer. And I don't know, how old am I now? 59. So I'm going to be like 60 any minute now. It's like, that sounds very old. Um, I'm still fighting internally with myself about what it means to be successful. So, for example, I'm now the Associate Provost for Artificial Intelligence. One argument says, "Oh my gosh, look how successful you've been. You actually are in this high-level university administration position." But like, in the voices in my head are saying, "But now you're spending less time teaching. You're spending less time writing papers. Like, papers, that's the measure of success. You should be doing more of that." Um, and so, like, I have to have these fights in my own head to just say, well, no, that's not what I'm doing right now. Like, yes, if I were working really hard on papers, and I was getting the attention from my peers and helping to change the conversation in a positive direction, that feels like success. But not doing that can also feel like success. And so I think it is a very broad thing. I think I think it's useful for people to think about, well, what are you challenging yourself? And are you meeting those challenges? Are you having a positive effect on the people around you? Are you having a positive effect on the world at large? And are you thinking somewhat long term? It's impossible, I think, as human finite beings, it's impossible for us to think completely long term about the infinite future. But like, you know, 5 years from now, 1 year from now, a week from now, like, are you doing a thing right now that is going to help you in a week or hurt you in a week? Um, I think success is about trying to get that horizon to be as far out as possible, and to spend as much time as possible of your time um, having a positive impact at that horizon. Does that make sense? And it's something that you can't. And if you take external validation as your only measure of success, like, I think other people can actually tell you a lot about how you're doing, but if you just outsource completely to the world, and like, if the world tells you you're doing well, then you're doing well. If the world doesn't tell you you're doing well, you're not doing well. That's a huge mistake.
Mhm.
You have to listen to the world's inputs, but you also have to use your own judgment, and you get to be the judge of that. And I think it's really, from a computer science and machine learning perspective, I think it's actually really interesting, because how does an agent judge its own success? How do you, like, a computer program that's trying to learn to solve a problem is striving to succeed? How do we define success for the agent? How do we as the programmers define it? And how does the agent itself, how does the program itself come to be successful? And that's a problem that we work on scientifically in my field of reinforcement learning. But it's, you know, if you think about it enough, you start to realize, oh, wait, this is the situation that we are in as people as well, that we have to have a notion of success and we have to measure things against it. And many objective measures of success are misleading. And if you follow them to the letter, you're actually going to make things worse. So you have to continue to ask yourself, how am I doing? How is this going? Am I headed in a good direction? And
Mhm.
so maybe success isn't a destination, right? Maybe it's the journeys we make along the way.
Mhm. Thank you so much. This has all been very insightful. Thank you for your time. It's been a great opportunity and a great experience.
Sure thing. It was very nice to meet you. Thanks for the questions.
Nice to meet you. I'll send up the whole edited interview after it's all said and done.
Yeah, sure, sure, sure. And so, and you're a junior, and what are you aspiring to? What does success look like to you?
Um, to be honest, I'm just in a sort of exciting period right now. Right now, yesterday was my last day at school in Houston, or I'm at Houston,
Okay.
Texas. And then I'm moving to the Washington, D.C. to work in the Senate as a page.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so I'm gonna be doing that for the rest of this year, and then next year I'm back in Houston. So I'm in a sort of flex state. I don't
That's exciting. Well, that's a great, yeah, that seems like a fantastic opportunity to learn new things and meet new people. I spent a 3-year period that ended this past summer in the federal government, and I interacted with I guess not a lot of pages, but a lot of people who worked on the Hill, worked in Congress in various ways. And first of all, amazing energy. Like they're very bright and they're very committed and they seem completely tireless. And I don't understand how they do that. So it's yeah, you're going to meet some amazing people. Be careful not to like be constantly comparing yourselves to them and feeling like, oh my gosh, how do they have all that energy? Maybe I'm not a good person. Like, don't fall into that trap
Okay.
because you're going to be around people that are like epically amazing, but you're epically amazing too. So don't like they're also intimidated by you. Don't go down that trap. But it is really exciting. And just to be in those buildings, like they're built to inspire awe. Like I feel like building architects, unlike say computer scientists, they're like taught how to make things that make people go, whoa.
Mhm.
And so, like, I don't know, enjoy that. I found that to be just amazing to be spending time in a city where so much of it was built to just like evoke these emotions of awe that I tried every time I tried every day that I was out there to just like take that in and appreciate that because here in Providence, Rhode Island, like it's nice, but it's not the same. And oh, fantastic! I hope you have a fantastic experience.
Hopefully, we'll see. I'm very excited.
Yeah, I mean, again, just take it for what it is, and don't measure success as, oh, did I meet 100 people that are going to help me get ahead. Like, don't think of it that way. Think of it as all the just exposure to different ideas and different ways of working, and you'll see that each person that you meet, they all think of success differently,
Mhm.
and they're none of them are wrong, but none of them are right, right? So like you get to decide.
Definitely, yeah. Thank
Awesome. Well, yeah, yay for you.
Thank you so much. It was super fun researching for this interview. I sort of just watched like everything that you have online. Not everything that you have online, obviously, except I sort of watched a lot of things. So it's been fun.
Well, that's great. That's great. So did you watch any of the music videos? Did you like any of them? I didn't answer your.
I watched the Thriller music video, which is very
Yeah, it's
surface level. I understand, but yeah,
Yeah, it's right, and it talks about machine learning, and it's got more hits than any of my other videos, so that's probably the place to start. Yeah, that's great. And
and then
so Charles Isbell, who did you read? There's another
yeah.
person in the video, Charles. Well, there was actually also the students, but I didn't meet them. But Charles is my buddy, and he's now the university president for the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. So he's like
Mhm.
very big deal right now,
Mhm.
and it's fun that we get to do silly things together.
Yeah, I watched the Lex Friedman right before this with you and
Oh, he was in.
yeah.
Did you watch the one with the two
The
of
one
us?
with
Or
both. Yeah, the two.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I had a great time with that. Yeah,
Mhm.
he's just I don't know. I'm a big fan of Charles. Lex also, I guess to some degree, but Charles is my favorite.
Mhm. And so I wanted to ask about this, but I wasn't sure if we have enough time. I'm not sure if I'm
Yeah.
taking too much time up. But
Oh, it's okay. I'm just gonna head out after we're done.
okay, so obviously I'm not a super techie kid necessarily, except even I knew about Bell Labs and all the greatness surrounding that. So how was your experience? I know you came a little later on in that journey, except how was that whole?
Yeah, Charles got to be at Bell Labs. I had been at two places that had just stopped being Bell Labs. Um, so what's the question? Was it cool?
Just what what was that like? I don't know.
It was awesome. It was awesome. I mean, I think kind of like DC. Like the way I was describing DC is that there's all these people. They're all different, but they're all really interesting. Like that's what it felt like at. So I was at Bellcore, which had just spun out of of Bell Labs, and I was at AT&T Labs, which had just spun out of Bell Labs. And people, well, the frustrating thing is people walk around. Were at the time they'd walk around the halls going like, wasn't Bell Labs great? And I was like, I don't know, I wasn't there. Stop. That's making me feel bad. But yeah, it was really, it was amazing. It was like like the best, most engaging parts of being in a university environment where there's people interested in just digging into ideas and connecting things together and asking really good questions and then actually answering some of those questions, but without the students, like without the requirement to like, okay, now I'm gonna do a lecture on this topic, and I'm gonna have to worry about grades, and I have to worry about cheating. Like there was none of that. It was just people just working on the hardest problems that they could think of. And I actually went to grad school after my time at Belcour. And one of the things that was really interesting is like before I went to school, professors would ask me to do homework. I would do the homework. It was fine. But after I had that experience and then I went back to school and I was in the class, professors would ask me questions and I'd be like, but don't you already know the answer to that question? Why are you wasting my time? Like, why are you asking me a question that you already know the answer to? You should be asking me questions that you don't know the answer to. And then I'm going to work all day and all night to try to get you an answer. But like, if you already know, why should I spend my time on that? So it was that kind of place. It was the kind of place where we were always working and we were always trying to push that boundary. And I just, yeah, I'm still, well, Charles was my buddy from there, but I had a bunch of other friends that I interact with that, from those experiences, they were just very bonding, informative kinds of experiences.
Mhm. Where did you say Charles is at right now?
He's now the chancellor at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. So it's basically the state university for Illinois, the flagship state university for the state of Illinois.
Very cool. No, I know about the university. I just didn't really hear
Okay.
what you said the first
Oh,
time.
okay. Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
going
yeah.
to it is hard to say fast. University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, right?
Yeah.
Or UIUC. Like the
Oh yeah.
abbreviation is even hard to hear because it's like UIUIC. Like it's anyway. Yes, that's where he is. Not Indiana. I sometimes get mixed up and think he's in Indiana, but it's like, nope, it's not Indiana. It's Illinois. It's the
Mhm.
one with the weird silent S.
Very cool. It's interesting to see. I got a little, I guess, a time skip forward from the interview where he was at Georgia Tech to now at UIUC. I didn't really get an update.
Yeah, well, no, that's a good point. No, it's just so fascinating because he was the dean of computing at Georgia Tech, and so he was kind of as high up as you can go at Georgia Tech on the computing side, but he wanted to go higher. He really wanted to have more broad influence on the conversation around education because there's so many topics that he's passionate about, and he feels like some of it is just not being done well, and he wants to help do it better. So he's like, I need to be a university president. And the university president at Georgia Tech wasn't going anywhere. So he wasn't going to just work his way up through Georgia Tech. So he put together a mathematical model of how one becomes a university president. And it was a spreadsheet. He shared it with me. It was essentially like on the techie side, it was a form of a Markov decision process. And what he discovered was you basically cannot become a university president at a top tier university unless you first are a provost at a school like that. Now, what's a provost? That's not a thing that a high school student would necessarily know. The provost is the kind of almost the number two at a university. There's the president and then the sort of vice president or the kind of the CEO, like the person who's actually running the university, mostly on the academic side, like really focused on the academic issues, is called the provost. And all of the major universities are headed by people who were provosts before they were presidents. And so he's like, I don't want to be provost, but I think I have to be provost. So I want to say auditioned. That's not the right word. He interviewed to be the provost at the University of Wisconsin. and he was there for basically the same time that I was at the National Science Foundation. So I left my university and went to federal government. He left his university and went to a different university and served as provost for a couple years until they decided, you know what, it's okay, you can go and look for a president job now. And yeah, in very short order, he got the position at Illinois. So yeah, it would happen fast, so you didn't miss much. But yeah, he started this summer. When I started my new position as associate provost, he became, Grand Poobah of Illinois. And I've never seen him so happy. He is just loving it. It's just he's having all kinds of new experiences. He's having a lot of influence. He's learning new stuff, and he's smiling in pictures, which he never used to do. So I think it's going quite well, actually.
I guess the luck favors the Charles aged well, or maybe very calculated luck.
I know. I came up with that even very early on. It was sort of very clear that he was going to follow a path where success would be around him, and it's true. The thing is, even luck favors the Charles, and that was good. That was a good callback. Not not because it's luck, but because he kind of makes it happen. Right. He has a very clear idea of where things need to go, and he's very good at analyzing. And this is just a great skill for anybody. Very good at analyzing, like I said, when he wanted to become president, he did an analysis. He didn't just like wait for someone to like call him up and say, "Hey, would you be president?" He's like, "This is what a person needs to have done to be considered for a position like that. Like if I want to be in a position where I'm going to have that kind of influence, this is what I need to do now." And so that's why luck favors the Charles, is because luck favors the prepared, and Charles is prepared.
Yeah, I
So
think that's
yeah.
definitely a lot more inspiring than just some sort of pure luck that happens where he sort of had a plan, executed quite well, and ended up working.
Yeah, yeah, and I can be, both of us, I think, can be a little bit glib and just like, yeah, here's a silly thing to say, but the reality is behind it. He works really hard. He just works really hard, and he cares very deeply. But he can absolutely come across as sort of very casual, right?
Mhm.
He just but there's a lot that's actually supporting that makes it work.